Hi everyone, welcome to the Drupal meetup. We're really excited to have Chris here today to talk about Drupal security. And we're all very excited that you all are here. So lots of familiar faces and some new faces.
And you are?
And I'm Mike Konetsky from 4 Kitchens. Who happens to be sponsoring, because I and also at the beginning of these, we usually ask for people who are looking for work and looking to hire. So who here is looking for, let's start out, who's here looking for work? New opportunities, contractor or full-time? Anybody want to just throw their name out there?
Sure, I'll throw my name out.
All right, great. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everybody, I'm Chris. I am looking for work. I am not hiring, so if y'all have any questions, feel free to come talk to me later. I think I know most everybody in the room.
What's your background?
My background is I was a CPA and kind of started looking into the development side of things. So, I don't know.
That's pretty cool.
And you have strong parents?
And you're here speaking.
Yes, I'm here speaking about security today.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else looking for work? Anybody here looking to hire somebody? Okay, so 4 Kitchens is hiring. We're hiring front-end developers, we're hiring back-end developers. So if you go to 4kitchens.com/careers, you can find the jobs that we have available. We're looking for contractors and have a couple of full-time positions open. Depending on the people that we meet, those are where those people will like what is going to be a contractor and what's going to be a full-time position.
Did you want to say anything about the junior thing? Is that public or?
Yeah, so I mean, for kind of the first time in our company history, we're looking for people who are starting out. If that's who you are, and you've in the past thought about applying to 4 Kitchens, but our job post had meet very big year requirements, then this is the time to apply. That's all I have. Anybody else? Okay. Well, Chris, actually, before you take it away, we should get pizza and eat it.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So grab some food and I'll sign it.
Thank you.
Yep.
See you on the next one.
Aren't you gonna get
Here go my numbers again.
I love it.
You won't have to take those my number 4. You can take it. Kidding. Yes. So I did book.
So, we just want to do a backup library. What do they call the guy that record everything?
Oh, really?
What do they call it?
Engineer.
No. He had,
Oh, he had the knack.
Yeah, when I saw that, I knew who I was thinking of. Right.
he got the knack.
Wow. So there's a little bit afterwards. I don't know if it's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, I did a little bit. I got a big calendar.
That's what I want to do.
And if you do it, go to Free Camp and just put.
Oh, I will. So we'll do a snapshot, and I can pull it, or let it.
Yeah.
So, and then,
Let's start that. Yeah, we can probably, we can talk and kind of figure out your call. So we're talking about that, is yours. Yep. We can figure out this now. Now we've got some time.
So, I'm gonna do that. What's the number school?
Yeah, well, mine are gonna go up. Mark and I did that. About an hour ago.
I'm pretty say
Give me
that.
your insulin gun, or whatever it is.
No, I don't have to do insulin yet, so that's the good news.
What are we doing?
Brandon?
You can get my wallet.
I tried to start a screen recording, and as soon as I did, this stopped displaying what was going on. You know anything about that?
Is it currently recording now?
No, I turned it off because it stopped doing new frames on the keyboard. Basically, as soon as I started recording, this went froze.
Airplay turn.
So for whatever reason, it stopped airplay. Right.
Yeah, you might not be able to do both.
I saw Michael doing it, but I guess he had it connected.
No, it's all right.
I have an HDMI cable. I feel that
If you want to switch and do that, yeah.
I know.
So they have,
Yes, I like that. Oh, we didn't do the.
I have to.
I got the whole thing.
Oh, they have it already? Okay, so is that long enough for doing these keys?
And then I've got to go to,
Like that, oh, she's the phone is like, but the homepage. Yeah, I'll just text you.
So, Brandon runs that.
There's nice.
Yeah, of helping people kind of get started,
Very good.
answering questions. So,
Anywhere from 5 to 12 people show up. That's Brandon right there. There are people that are strong. So Complex is a great place to go.
Go ahead and restart it. We haven't done anything yet.
Can you see it? Okay.
yeah.
I think this is right.
To get started. So hey, Brandon.
Yep.
Question.
Yes.
So besides Drupal Edge on the OS training, Drupal VM, and Drupal Dojo, anything else to put on that list of where to get started with your
I never
Build a
know.
module.
Build a module.
build module? That's right.
Very good. I highly recommend it.
Awesome, thanks. So let's see if it freezes up when I start screen recording.
Build a module is more verbose, but if you know nothing about Drupal, it is an excellent place to start. They'll also teach you PHP.
Vito teaches.
I was gonna say Vito.
Okay, that should be working
sorry.
because.
Yes.
There was a listed training resource.
Thank you.
Put Vito on the list.
Did you get that? You know, Vito has to train, next.
Oh yeah. Wait, who?
He can moonlight.
No, Vito, yeah.
Don't.
Are you ready to bring it up?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm trying to start learning and trying to figure out the best platform to download and all this kind of stuff, so which will, and,
You have,
Thank you for being patient.
Oh no,
You know.
that's what we're here for, right? Teach everybody.
but you should explain to her first what the Drupal learning system
We
is.
do online.
No, it needs to be a self-discovery.
Don't worry, it's one of my first slides.
I did that in a presentation last week and I didn't get the result I expected.
Yeah. Mine's a little different. Added some modification to it.
That's an easy way to do it.
And then you can use it in your local environment. You get it all. And then you can
And then we can start.
Thanks for the pizza.
Huh?
Thanks for the pizza.
You're welcome. Please eat it all. You all are gonna take it all home because I'm not eating. So, trying to be less like.
If there's any left, I'll grab some at the end.
You can do white coffee.
Please, spend food on everybody.
Yeah, so I have a, strong background, but I have like 10 years gap.
Cool. I definitely want this to be kind of like an open discussion. So as I'm going through, if y'all have questions, just raise your hand, let me know. If I don't know the answer, somebody here probably does. So we'll work together as a group. Security, as I've titled it here, no man is an island. This is not something you do by yourself. This is something you do as a community. you come together and help each other. That's the only way to do it. So that's why I titled it, No Man is an Island. I'm Christopher Martin, and I believe that Austin is the technology capital of the world. When I was traveling through China, I noticed a lot of websites I was coming back to when I was searching for stuff were hosted here in Austin. So this is definitely the right place to be. And today is October 21st, 2015, Back to the Future Day. So I kind of wanted to open it up and just get a general feeling of what do y'all think is security? Like, what is the definition of security to y'all? Anybody?
Fear?
Fear? I think that's definitely one of the common emotions. I think as I've been kind of preparing this presentation, that is almost the overwhelming feeling that when people think about security, they think about fear.
I was going to say the opposite, not having to fear.
That's the other side of it. If you feel secure, then you can not worry about your fear.
That's what I want.
Good
No.
OPSEC.
So,
Good OPSEC.
Good point.
OPSEC, Operational Security, OPSEC.
do you have, you want to expand on that?
No.
No? Just, okay.
Look it up.
All right.
I think culture, like having a culture of security or the way you approach it and think about it versus, not so much.
Right. Yeah, it's built in, it's habits, right?
Yeah.
Does that cover it, or does someone else have some other feelings about it?
What does it mean to you?
I think as I've been going through this, I've noticed it's almost more of an emotion than logic. That security is something emotional. You know, if you feel secure, then you feel good. If you don't feel secure, you feel bad, and it's all feelings.
Like a peace of mind.
It's all your mindset. Right? Security is not necessarily something you can give a fact to, right? Like, I am factually secure. Well, not necessarily, because that changes day to day, right? Just like emotions. Emotions flow.
It's not necessarily binary either.
Right.
You're not usually secure or not secure. It's like, well, how secure are you? Right?
Exactly.
Very secure.
And how much of a trade-off between security and functionality is there? Because you can be so secure you can't function.
Right, yeah, efficiency is another thing to get into. You can secure yourself so much that you become immobile, you can't do anything.
Well, and then I'm the ignorant one that doesn't know anything about it. So y'all have to deal with that emotion of ignorance and denial.
Denial, I like that.
Mhm.
And if there's money involved, it's a whole new thing.
There's different levels, like we're talking about, it's not binary. So I think that kind of opens us up to how everybody feels. This is how I felt, you know, I was living what I call my island life, right? My perfect world. It was just me, and I wasn't worried about anything. I had my Drupal site, and then all of a sudden the Drupal learning curve hit me. Right, so there were some crackers that bulldozed me over, and then there's me falling down, and I was lucky enough to have the Drupal dojo catch me. Right. So we have. We can thank Brandon Williams for spending the last 5 years hosting the Drupal dojo, and that he was around when I needed him. So thank you. Here's my disclaimer, right? Every good presentation has to have a disclaimer. I'm not a security expert. I'm expressing my opinions. Use this information at your own risk. I'm not making a guarantee as to the accuracy or completeness. Web security is something that's ever changing. And if you need some help, there's companies like Acquia and Pantheon that you can go to. And in all likelihood, you're going to get hacked. So let's figure out how to mitigate the damages. Before I jumped into security and different things about, you know, problems with it, I wanted to say I love Drupal. I love the community. Everybody that I've met here is great. I feel that this group of people is very genuine. I've not felt like that a whole lot of other places. I believe that Drupal is modular. The code base is very flexible, and that's awesome to me that I can just write a module and throw some code in. I don't have to rewrite everything in Drupal, right? I don't have to worry about user logins or anything like that. It's just built in. It's free and open source, and everybody loves free. And I'm going to come back to this over and over again, but Dresh is your friend. So Dresh up is something you want to remember. I wanted to give a special thanks to Capital Factory, the Austin Drupal Dojo, and Brandon Williams in particular. The Austin, Texas Hackerspace, I got some help from those guys out there. Open Office, and all Drupal contributors. Today I'm going to talk about just 4 general categories. We're going to talk about Drupalgeddon, the mistakes that I made before and after. And then we're going to talk about some industry standards that you can do to protect your site, and some other tips that I came up with along my journey of security. So I wanted to get some more kind of a background on who I'm talking to help me figure out what to say. So who here has made a Drupal site? Like at least one. Okay. And who's ever been cracked? We have a couple. How many recovered from that? Okay, so we're all in the same boat. Yeah, it's rough. Anybody use the command line? Okay, I think I'll be giving some examples of that. I'm glad we have a pretty good base. Who uses professional hosting, like Acquia for their sites? Okay. Anybody do shared hosting? Yep, got a couple. And anybody do your own hosting? Okay, great. So I was doing my own hosting, and that's going to be a big theme of this talk. So why did I pick on Drupalgeddon? Why is this one patch important as opposed to all of the others that have come out? And then what about it, or what was it? Right, we'll be diving into that. Who should care, and how did it work? So why talk about it? One, it affected me, so I looked into it and I researched it. And I think it's one of the most interesting Drupal patches. Mainly because of the repercussions that it had, or that it could have. Actually, Drupal has a pretty good history of security, so events like this are pretty rare to happen, and most security patches are minor, right? So the first security patches that I saw come through, it's like, oh, this is kind of a minor patch, no big deal, you know, don't really worry about it. So for months, I went on with that big red thing on my site that said, hey, you have a security update. Do you want to update it? I'm like, no, don't worry about that. You know, I'll do it later. Not so good, right? One of my mistakes. Okay, and so Drupalgeddon in particular was a patch released to Drupal core, and it was only one line. This was not a super complicated patch, but this one line had a vulnerability so bad that every Drupal site would be affected if it was not patched. Actually, most sites were patched, so most sites were unaffected. I was kind of the guy living off in his island world that didn't really get the security messages, didn't get the updates. I wasn't involved in the community. You know, all of these things added up to my site ultimately having create, read, update, and delete privileges for anonymous users on my database. They could do anything they wanted. So why should you care about Drupalgeddon?
Chris, can you go back? What was that last bullet? I think you said the first 7 hours after the new release.
Oh, yep, okay. So the first attacks happened within 7 hours after this patch. That's when they were first found in the wild. So it happened very quickly, and except for it took me months to find out I'd been hacked. So it wasn't like I was monitoring it. Other people were, and I'm glad that they were, because they didn't have to go through what I went through. But everybody should care about this because crackers use everyone in their workflow. And let me explain something real quick. I'm saying crackers and not hackers because there's a difference. The Austin, Texas hackerspace explained it to me. A hacker is generally someone who builds things, and a cracker is someone who breaks things or figures out how to exploit someone else's site without permission. So that's the definition of the words that I'll be using. And just because you have a small site doesn't mean that you're immune. My site actually had one visitor almost all the time for the months that it was up, and that was just me, because I didn't really tell anybody about my site. It was kind of like, hey, I'm going to throw my site up because I'm starting a tax practice, so let me have a website, because everybody should have a website, right? Okay. But yeah, so pretty much it doesn't get smaller than that, and I was still a target when I got hacked.
And you were using Drupal, obviously.
I was obviously using Drupal. Yeah, I found this awesome thing called Drupal when I was in China, and so there I built a couple websites and had some fun with it. It was Drupal 7. Yeah, I said, hey, Drupal looks great. I played with it for like a year, came back to the US, said I need a site for my tax practice, set it up, let it run, and then didn't do security updates. So that's kind of the story, the background of how we got there. I also looked through my logs after I'd been hacked and found out I had a lot of like mydomain.com/wp-login, which is the WordPress login, but I was running Drupal, so I had not been hacked until Drupalgeddon. So let's talk about how it worked, or at least one example of how it could work, I should say. The most common exploit that I came across from different websites I'd come to was the user login form was what was used, and the form input for username was altered. And let me just keep running through the steps. That there was actually a process of many things that had to go wrong in order for this to actually happen. The form input didn't have necessarily like controls over it, and then the user login, authenticate, validate is the function that creates the SQL statement, and then the SQL statement gets sent to Drupal prepared statements, right? So it's actually the database connection class in Drupal, which calls expand arguments. And expand arguments was where the one-line patch was. And the problem was that expand arguments expected an indexed array, which is a numerical array, right? So the keys should be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., instead of string and then value. And so when somebody came across this and said, hey, I can put a string here, let's see what happens. Well, this is what happens. And in reality, this bug had been out there for a while. It had not been seen in the wild. Nobody really knew about it. A security firm was doing a review on Drupal site, came across it, and said, hey, we better report this to the Drupal security team, which manages all Drupal security problems. And they handled it in regards to, they saw the exploit, they figured out how to fix it, and then there were announcements that came out. I just hadn't signed up for the mailing list, right? So I'm going to talk about that later. Always sign up for the mailing list. But so this numerical versus associative array was the problem. It was a super easy fix, one line. This is the one line right here. So for each data as I was changed to for each array values data. So it's
Where are you?
It's removing the keys, right? So this variable, or let's see. Yeah, this is an array that has keys in it when it's improper, and this removes the keys because that's not how it was designed, right? It was designed that it should be numerical indexed. And that was it. So that one line got me, and I actually do have a walkthrough if y'all are curious as to exact steps. What I've done is I've produced a visual example of how to do it, right? So real crackers would use scripts, and they would have bots sent out to attack every single Drupal site they could find, right? So 7 hours into it, bots were running, they were running alphabetically, hitting every Drupal site and looking for this. The sites actually, if they were found to be vulnerable, the crackers would hop in and then patch behind them so that nobody else could get in. So that basically it was their site and nobody else could get it. But I'm actually not going to walk through this. It's something y'all can do on your own. I think it should take you about 30 minutes. I've gone like very detailed, like so if there's a command line argument you need to type, you can type it. And it even walks you through setting up a Drupal site. So if you've never set up a Drupal site before, this shows you how to do it. Well, if we have time at the end, we can walk through it. And let me, does somebody want to hand these out for me? I went ahead and printed this so you can take it home.
Will you be posting a presentation on the meetup site maybe?
Yeah, we can do that.
If you so desire.
All right, so let me go ahead and skip through this, and then if you all want to and we have time at the end, we'll come back to it. So let's take a vote real quick. Who wants to walk through it? Let's go ahead and skip it, and then there's about half and half. So.
It's worth it. You made me get out of denial real fast.
Yeah. So I had her walk through it last night. It was interesting. I think it's worth it if y'all want to go through.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's one of those things that it's almost something that you should do so you can experience it yourself to make sure you know how to type everything right though. Like if you've never set up a site, it walks you through how to set up a site. See, I think that was the last one. Okay, well, I'll walk through the slides since it sounds like there is an interest in it. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'll let you all do it at home, but I'll talk you through the steps. So the basic first step is to install Drupal 7.31. You have to install Drupal 7.31 and earlier because all of the versions after that have the patch included and you can no longer do this. So this is more of an educational type thing, what actually happens to a site when it gets cracked. You're going to need Acquia Dev Desktop and a basic knowledge of Unix commands. And then, so there's a couple commands right there you'll need to type. So basically go to the Acquia Dev Desktop home folder, download Drupal 7.31, wait for Just to finish, and make sure you're disconnected from the internet when you do this, right? Because you're going to have a Drupal site with insecure code. So if you're on a public Wi-Fi or anything, definitely disconnect. Acquia Dev Desktop, you can click the plus button at the bottom left of your screen to import a local Drupal site. So this is what it's going to look like. That's the screen that pops up. You'll pick your Drupal 7.31 folder. Everything else will autofill. Your local code base will, let's see. Yeah, so the rest of it will autofill. I already said that. You're going to open a web browser, navigate to your new Drupal website, run the install.php script. All right, so I said or whatever you named it. So if you didn't name it Drupal-7-31.dd, whatever you did name it, just navigate to /install, and it'll run through a normal install. If you get a fatal error, like I did, because cookies were not enabled, then here's how to fix it. You basically drop all of your database tables and run through the install script again. Or you can make sure cookies are enabled before you run the install script. Let's see. And then this is where we actually get into the Drupalgeddon exploit. I was following a tutorial by Matt. Anybody know how to say his last name? Krosov? And so there's his article if you want to go more in depth as to what I've shown you here. I gave you all very specific instructions. He goes more into what the hackers actually did to his site, right? He had like a Wales apocalypse site or something that he was running, and that was his site that got hacked. And so he talks about it on his tutorial, which is pretty good. It walked me through it and got me to the point where I'm at. Let's see. And then, so once you've opened your browser and gone to the Drupalgeddon site, you're gonna go to the username input field, you're gonna right click and inspect the element, and so you're gonna see all of the HTML for your page. And you're actually gonna go in there and you're gonna edit it. So you need a web browser that's gonna allow you to edit it. One thing I'm working on is trying to figure out whether or not development tools is required. I have development tools enabled on my machine, so I'm not sure if you have to have them or not. But if you're having problems, just go download the development tools for your browser. So copy the input field with edit name, which is basically your username field, and you're actually going to have two. So it's going to seem really strange logically that you should have two username fields to make this work. But you're creating an array for username, which is actually this exploit. So it's no longer a single value, you're turning it into an array with keys, right? With an associative key, not a numerical key. And then from there, I tell you pretty much what to enter. You're gonna change the first input name to name equals, quote, name 0, and then you're gonna insert your SQL. You can insert anything you want, right? Any SQL command that Drupal could normally run on the database, you can also now run as an anonymous user. I make a note here that you don't need actual login information. All you have to do is see the login field. And so I give you an example of an SQL that will work. Basically, you can insert into the variables table the name hacked and the value yes. That's how the variables table works. You can look into that later. So here I give you some screenshots if you don't like reading. So you can just go to your username field, right click, go to inspect element. Here's what it's going to look like before you make all of your changes. And here's what it's going to look like after you make all the changes.
So you duplicated that, right?
Right, so as you can see here, the input field is copied twice. So we're creating an array in the first input. And then the reason we need the second one is because since we referenced name 0 in this array, we actually have to have a name 0. We're not using this for anything, but in order for it to not throw a PDO exception, it has to exist. So that's what we're doing here. And I'm going to go and make a note that this has to be at the same like hierarchical level, right? So if you click on this and copy and paste, it's going to put it embedded within this input, but that's not where you want it. You have to click on your div class and then paste it from here so that they're at the same level. And then at the very end, after everything looks like this, you're going to go back to your input fields, right? So you're going to have a box here that says username. You're going to have another one underneath it, and then you're going to have password. You can type anything in there. I typed hi, right? So I just typed hi, and I think even for the password, I typed hi. And then I click login, and after that, let's see. So here I tell you, go ahead and change it. If you follow the pictures of what I told you to change it to, it'll get you there also. Here I told you go ahead and type any value into it. It's doesn't matter what the value is, no real login information is necessary. And that's super scary, right? That you don't have to have valid login information for this to work. And then you click the login button and go back to Acquia Dev Desktop, click on your local database link, scroll down to the bottom, click on your variables table, and if you see hacked in your variables table, then you know that you were successful, and that's Drupalgeddon, right? So here I give you some more screenshots. That's what the variable table looks like. And if you see hacked in the values of your variable table, then that now proves that you can insert anything into the database that you want. And the final and most important step, delete your Drupalgeddon site. Do not leave it on your computer, right? This has not been patched. This exploit is still out here. And now anybody can do this, and they can type stuff other than hacked and yes on your site, right? So here I say delete it by opening Acquia Dev Desktop again. Click on your Drupalgeddon site and click the minus button. From there, it will delete it. These are images, right? So click Drupal 731, click delete, and you should have a window pop up that looks like that. So that was my very quick run through. If y'all are interested, you can copy what I did. I wrote down the instructions for you. Let's see. Did I not make this full screen? I guess I changed it. I forgot to go back. So here's the mistakes that I made before I was cracked. This ultimately led to a total loss of my website. So I did not perform security updates. Had I done this, that would have fixed everything. I also did not perform version control on my source code. So, okay, great, now I've been hacked. I can no longer trust my source code. I didn't make backups of my database. So, you know, I know they can run SQL on my database. Basically, everything now needs to be scrapped in my database.
Hey, Chris?
Yes.
So according to a previous slide, you said that attacks were being made within 7 hours of the publication of this hack. So it sounds like performing security updates in a timely manner is important.
Yes. I didn't do them at all.
Well,
yeah. But yes, in a timely manner, for sure. Thank you for bringing that up. You have every Wednesday is when the security updates come out, so make sure you're following the mailing list every Wednesday and you're patching your site.
Well, but I think part of the point too is you didn't have any customers and you didn't think it was doing anything. It was out there being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my take on this, is that even though we weren't using it for anything, we were just kind of playing around with it. It was actually a big security problem.
That's correct. So I basically left a port open on my router to a machine that was running compromised code, and ultimately, I mean, I honestly didn't put that much work into my site. I think I probably put 8 hours of work into it, so it was not like a terrible loss. But you know, just knowing that you've been hacked is not a good feeling. So it bothered me, obviously, to the point where I got to this talk. I wanted to figure out about it and share it with y'all.
Chris, did they do anything to your site once they got into it?
Yes,
What were they doing?
I'm going to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
It's about 3 or 4 slides from now.
Oh my.
Yeah, also not on here, but should be on here. Can you write down on this slide? Do you have a pen?
There's one on my bag right there.
I guess I'll go back later. But my files directory is not on here. That's also something that I did not have a backup of. So I still wonder as to what my exact permissions on that directory were before all of this happened. I'll get into it later, but something interesting happened in my files directory. So it really should have been on here. Let's see. I also didn't chroot my site, so once I got into my site, and they had access to my site for months because Drupalgeddon happened months before I actually found that I'd been compromised. So who knows what they did. I didn't monitor my site. Actually, monitoring my site was how I found out I had been hacked. I finally decided one day, you know what? I have allowed anonymous users to submit a request to join my site, but I've required administrator approval. Well, I'm tired of these hundreds of spam accounts that have been created, so let me start deleting them. So as I'm deleting these hundreds of spam accounts that have been created, I come to one that says administrator. Oh God. So I have user UXQIP something with administrator access. What's my first thought? Delete. One of my mistakes made. I did not make a forensics backup of my site. I immediately started saying, oh God, I've been hacked, and deleting like all of their access. Oops. So monitoring my site was what actually found it, but I was not doing timely monitoring of my site. So mistakes I made after I was hacked, I didn't make a forensics backup. I would talk about the spam accounts, and the first thing you should do is make a backup, right? As you're going through it. Let me make a backup so I know exactly what happened later, and then I can start deleting everything so I know that they don't have access to it. Let's see, I actually never got my site back up and running. To this day, it's still not running. My web server is also not running. And basically just panicked and unplugged the computer because of what I'm about to tell you, right? So I did do a little bit of analysis, how much access did they get, what actually happened. It all started with this administrator account. Okay, I have an administrator that's not me on my website. What happened? Well, let me go check my files directory. Oh, look, there's PHP code in my files directory. Oh, look, my .ht access is blank. Why is there nothing in my .ht access file? My public files directory should have something in it, like that blocks PHP code. So this stuff is bad. And then I see my database is in my files directory, but I didn't put it there. So somebody's now downloaded my database. So my database is now existing somewhere out on the internet. Well, also in here, I get a call from Time Warner Cable. Hey, actually, no, I did not get a call. What happened was I was traveling and I was trying to connect back to my home server. I couldn't get access. I'm like, okay, my VPN went down. I have to go back home and turn it back on. Nope, I go back home, try to fix my VPN, still don't have internet access. Okay, let's call Time Warner Cable. Nope, sorry, you're gonna have to call our abuse team or something. You've been shut down. Right, okay, so I have to wait until hours between 8 and 5 because that's when they work. And then I call them back and I say, hey, what's going on? Well, we found out that your network was trying to connect to a command and control center. So we shut you down. Most likely it's a PC on your network and you just need to run some virus stuff. Okay, well, Time Warner Cable gives me this virus stuff. I go to my PC on my network and I start running all this stuff. My server was actually on a Mac, so my PC was not infected at all. I tell them, okay, I've run all this stuff, activate my internet again, they turn it back on. I don't exactly know the order of events. I'm kind of guessing what happened here, but at some point I noticed that my server has 333,000 spam emails trying to go out. So I was connected to a bot network on my server that was trying to send out spam. Okay, well, that's not too bad because Time Warner Cable blocks everything and it was stuck in the queue, right? So that's one good thing. I think I forgot to mention my funny part. They got my database, but the only thing they got was that they need to pay their taxes on certain days in the year because that's the only thing I was using my website for. So congratulations, they now know they need to pay their taxes.
On all the money they stole from hacking other.
Yeah. It's income. I don't know. It's a good question. Let's see.
I guess income from theft, you still have to pay taxes.
I don't know. That is a good question. I'm slightly curious now.
Where is that?
It's their profession, right? we'll send that message to the IRS and see what they say.
Just as like a total aside, there's a, I don't know, through the internet found out that there was a financial like application like for crime or whatever that had a symbol for other income was the guy from Breaking Bad.
Right.
That's funny. I like that.
Your crystal method.
Yeah, yeah. Your other income.
Other income.
Let's see here. So I never actually got an email or a phone call from Time Warner Cable. I thought that would have been nice. And then I was looking through my system log, and I saw something that appeared to be my Drupal user running things that root should be running. And then I just said, okay, I'm going to unplug you. You're done. So my server has been unplugged for the last few months. Eventually I'm going to figure out how to safely diagnose what happened. That's going to take some time. So I feel that I learned these guys have way too much time. Even to come up with this, right? Like, who even thinks about creating 2 username fields? Like, that seems to me like a different conceptual level of thought than what most people think about, right? It's just, who even comes up with that? But anyway, I don't know. So we should prepare ourselves for the next Drupalgeddon, right? We're not perfectly secure. This is not a perfectly secure world, but we can do things to mitigate the damages so that we don't have to scrap our site and start over. Don't pretend you're on an island by yourself. Oops. And one command would have saved me, dress up. Creating a cron job with dress up would have made sure that my site was always getting those patches. And you can even append security updates only to Dresh. So if you want to make sure your site's up to date, just run a cron job with Dresh and you don't have to worry about it, right? You can feel safer at the end of the day because you know you have the Drupal security team watching your back, and every time stuff like this comes out, they're patching it and you're getting the update. So I would recommend that. I think that a broken site, right? So let's say there is a patch and it breaks your site. A broken site is better than a compromised site. That's my personal opinion. And then I thought it was amazing how it was just 2 words that could have fixed this. This is what I'm calling the industry standards, the Drupal security review module, right? That's a great module to use. I did not know about it for a long time. I actually installed it on some of my sites and found out some of my default settings were not proper. And this is actually not a module meant for protecting sites. It's a module meant for evaluating whether a host gives their customers secure default installations. But it also works on your own site. So if a hosting provider has to pass it, I personally think it should be good for me too. And then that's my industry standards. Basically, get some help from the industry, from the community. I'm just getting plugged into this, so I think that's right. Anybody else agree? Or are there? Yeah? Okay.
So, speaking of which, when you ran that, your hosting site was not secure.
Yeah, so HostGator doesn't pass. Their default installation is not up to par. But obviously, places like Acquia and Pantheon, and anybody you actively see advertised on Drupal.org, if they're on Drupal.org, they're passing this. So you can feel better about that.
What HostGator did?
Well, so I chatted with the guy at HostGator, and I said, hey, I ran this module, and all hosting providers are supposed to pass it, but I'm noticing that the permissions that y'all are setting don't pass this. Can we look into this? And he said, sure, let me just run our permission script again. So he ran the permission script again, and it still didn't pass. And I showed it to him. He said, okay, well, I'll send it up to our administrators, and they'll look into it. It's been a few months and I haven't heard back.
Oh, but the whole Apache thing.
Oh, well, the reason it wasn't patching is because Apache was running as your user, right? So if you imagine that your user is normally the owner of a file and Apache should be the group, Apache was actually the owner of the file. So you can get it to pass this if you remove write access for the owner, but that's not generally what people do. Generally, the owner should be able to write to the files.
And you say it could change the HTX and HTML files.
Well, that's
Is that a different?
something about Apache, that's something different. And if you run the security review module, it should tell you files that are writable. But yeah.
And the default HTX is Drupal writable. Even if it's security.
Not by the, I mean, it shouldn't be writable by the user that's running the PHP, right? Because that's like, I think the purpose of having permissions.
Right.
Like if you can, because at that point you can essentially just write your own permissions, right? It's kind of like sort of saying,
Right. It should only be readable by Apache. It should not be writable by Apache.
or whoever's running the PHP, like whoever the PHP process is running.
So .htaccess files are something I will briefly mention as I've asked about it a little bit. .htaccess is not actually something that's managed by core. So I asked somebody on the Drupal security team, meaning it's not actually managed by the Drupal security team. It is the responsibility of each site owner to make sure that .htaccess it has the right permissions and it has all of the right stuff in it. So I recommend using the security review module.
The security module point out the issue with your .htaccess file. Did you see that? That would be an interesting experiment.
It would be. So.
I've often wondered, I keep reading about putting the private files outside of .root. And I see that from time to time, and I've never done that. And can anybody talk to that about is it okay to put it within, under the default files structure? Because I think that's the default where it goes, right? But then they tell you, no, move it outside .root.
I think if you have Drupal set up your private files for you, then it is within your web root. But obviously it's more secure to put it outside of your web root because you can navigate to your private files if you know the URL, or I guess the URI. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I didn't know you could. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The security thing for private files is when you have a private file, you want to check that the current user is authenticated to view the file. The only way you can do that is to have Drupal authenticate the user and then have Drupal deliver the file. So if your files are in your web root, then you can just type in the URL to the file and bypass Drupal. So then you're bypassing that private file authentication. If you put it outside of the web root, Drupal can read files outside of the web root, but you can't type in a URL to get access to it. So Drupal will authenticate you, it will read the file, and then basically proxy it to you. So now it's served through Drupal.
Okay, thank you.
And you can have it in the web root, but you have to make sure that that folder is treated differently, right? So it's more complicated, but it's possible, right? And I'm not entirely sure.
I think you would have to modify a .htaccess file
Yeah.
or your actual Apache configuration.
About a year ago, there was a, Drupal would complain about the htaccess file for the private file system. If you didn't have it set, they want.
Yeah, and it should complain always about the public file system. Because there's a .htaccess file that needs to be added to that for you to be able to for it to stop PHP executables from being dropped there.
Well, my question is that what they'll complain about, make you do with the HT access file for the private files, does that stop what Brandon's talking about? Or you can put in the URL if you knew exactly what it is?
I don't know exactly, but if
Yeah.
you should try it.
Okay, all right, you answered my question, then get it out of the doc group.
Yes, or make sure that that folder does not accessible outside of, being served by PHP essentially.
Right. If it's in your doc root of your website, there's really nothing you can do to prevent somebody from just typing in a URL.
Okay, so I think that answers that question. That was a good question. The private file system is different than the public file system, and it should reside outside of your web root, ideally. I guess it depends on what you're trying to protect, right? How secure do you want it to be? So my tips that I found after going through this process, number one, involve yourself in the community, right? There's a great community. What we just did is a perfect example of helping each other. That's why you want to get involved. Tip number two, build your defense in layers. Don't rely on just one thing to protect your site. I'll go more in depth into that. Have a development workflow. Set the right permissions, protect your code, protect your database, test your backups, and make sure you dress up at a minimum every Wednesday. So step number one, when I say involve yourself in the community, what I actually mean first is sign yourself up for the security mailing list. I tell you how to do that here if you haven't already. Go to Drupal.org and edit your profile to sign up for the security announcements newsletter. Attend the local events and join the IRC. I actually found the Austin Drupal Dojo through IRC. I'm glad that we had an IRC channel because I think it was when I logged into the IRC, I saw we meet every Thursday, and I was like, awesome, I'm going.
It's hashtag Drupal-Austin on Freenode.
I would be super happy if everybody joined the IRC channel and started chatting in that. For the most part, not too many people are active in that channel, but that would be super cool if we could get an Austin Drupal channel pretty active. Or we could just go meet and talk like this.
Well, but it's an augmentation of meeting and talking like this because you can't always be here. It's once a week. So in that downtime, and it might actually stimulate things to be discussed in person.
So definitely get involved. Then make sure you have defense in layers. Right here, I'm going to go ahead and recommend do not host a production site at home. Okay, you're just opening a hole into your private network that you don't want there. You don't want to have to worry about your home, all of your computers getting compromised. So I'll talk more about that in regards to your proper workflow, but it's just separating it, getting that production off of your home network. But you should have a secure home network. So make sure that your router is your first line of defense. Shut down all your ports. Change your default username and password. Don't use DMZs. It seems like a great idea, but it's actually not. Demilitarized zones basically just say, hey, this computer, I'm going to open all the ports on it so that you don't have any problems. Mainly when you're trying to play the game that you want to play, or you're screen sharing or webcasting or whatever you're doing. I'm having some problems, so I'm going to throw it in a DMZ. Well, now every single port has been opened to that computer. It's not a good idea. And then keep your firmware up to date. Keeping up to date is like the #1 thing you can do for security. There's tons of people out there working to keep you secure, and if you don't keep up to date, the vulnerabilities are most likely out there and known in the wild.
Before you get off the router thing, I think Brandon brought it up, that the default manufacturer's firmware was more vulnerable than the third-party firmware, which is weird.
There
Talk about that.
are a lot of routers that come out with hacks against the router itself. And so, usually when that happens, it makes news, not just like nerd news, but regular news. and so you'll usually hear about it, but that's part of keeping your firmware up to date. And then also, a lot of routers have like remote management, so you can log into the router from outside of your home network. You definitely want to turn that off, because they usually don't have brute force protections. So normally you log in 5 times and you're locked out. Well, most remote management doesn't have that at all. So if you have remote management on, then anybody can just brute force your router until they get your admin login. Just turn it off if you don't need it.
Yeah, because when you ever like logged into a remote, like, I mean, it's the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
The dude will always just be, and what's so, I don't know, what's so infuriating is you have to actively turn it off.
A lot of them have it enabled by default.
Yeah. Make it easier? I don't know. Like, who?
Probably people like me that think they live on an island and not too worried about the rest of the world.
Well, that's the thing is that you shouldn't. I mean, I don't want to worry about that. Like, I actually don't. I don't really. It's not. I don't know, it's not my department. But it kind of has to be. Like, everybody has to go through and like make sure that their home router is not allowing remote management. That's the exact opposite of the way that it should work.
Yeah.
You had mentioned this to me, that if you're on the mailing list, if you're not on the mailing list, the crackers are on the mailing list. So when a security flaw comes out, they know about it immediately. So if you're not patching your site, they've just been told, here's a security flaw, and here's where it is, and here's how to.
I guess I didn't mention it, but one of the things I found, I mean, who really knows where the crackers originated, but when I looked through my Drupal watchdog logs, I saw that the IP addresses were bouncing all over like Europe and Asia and Australia and stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting. But what I wanted to say is this Drupalgeddon security flaw was so well announced that, in my personal opinion, I'm pretty sure the organizations of crackers that are out there called everybody in and said, hey, Drupal's having a major security update. Everybody's coming into work. And we're gonna figure out what's going on and we're gonna get to it first. And I mean, that's the only way that they could do it in 7 hours.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's also like that. Look at it like more in the sense of like there's a very small group of people who have a lot of infrastructure set up to be able to do a lot of damage quickly, and that's like that's really the biggest danger with some of these, like with something like Drupal, is that they've already got lists of all like of tens of thousands of Drupal sites and their IP addresses and their URLs, right?
Yeah. Well, and so there's also, just like we love open source because one person can fix something and everybody gets the fix. Crackers also love open source, and all the tools they use for detecting and finding and all that kind of stuff is also open source. So only one person has to write a crack for the Drupalgeddon thing, and they give that to the cracker community, and now anybody can run that. So.
And it's easier to buy a network of bots than probably a pizza at this point online. It's not, you can just Google it, like botnet.
Right.
And be able to like buy it on it.
Yep. Here's a couple Bitcoins.
Yeah.
Give me 2,000 computers.
Yep. So that's, yeah.
Well, if somebody bought mine, they're now -1.
Yeah.
Take that.
Yeah. So your router is definitely your first line of defense. Obviously, it's important. Everyone here just decided to throw some input, meaning it's that important. After that, look at your Apache configuration files. Make them as restrictive as possible. Go into your .htaccess for your Drupal and hit deny from all and allow from whatever your trusted IP address network is, if you can do that, if it's not a production website, right? So if you're just doing your local development on your laptop, go ahead and shut it down from everything else but localhost. Why would you want to open it up? You don't need to. Your staging environment maybe is hosted somewhere else. Mine is on the same one as my production. So I put my home network as the trusted IP address. And then that's as restrictive as I can be at that point. So anybody have any inputs on Apache and configuration files? Make sure they're there. Sometimes when you copy a Drupal site, it does not copy hidden files. That's a common problem I've had when I'm migrating sites. If you just hit copy your Drupal site from one location to another, hidden files don't always come with it. So
Which means your
.htaccess file does not always get carried over. Most of the time, you'll end up with a problem that the rewrite module is not turned on, and so your site just actually won't work. And so that's your indication that the .htaccess files didn't come across. But another one that doesn't come across is your git ignore. Let's see. So at the application level, security review. It's pretty much my go-to right now. So install it on all your sites and check it, and use DreshUp.
When you say uninstall it, do you mean actually uninstall or remove the directory, the module directory, or just?
Right, so yeah, I guess that's what I put here. On your production site, install the security review module, test it to see if it's secure, and then go ahead and remove it, because that's just another potential security hole that you're giving people more information than maybe they need. Like if they did compromise your site in one way, you don't want to have the security review module installed so that they can see all the other ways that it's also insecure.
You're just saying turn it off.
Turn it off or actually delete the module?
I mean, I would probably just
because I know they say
remove it from your site.
They say that, and I don't understand what they mean.
I think that that's what I also read is like remove it from your production website. And that's just, you know, it's being extra protective, making sure that if you do have one way in that you don't tell them everything else easily.
So then every time you want to run it again, you reinstall it?
So on your production website, if you changed something, you would want to rerun it. So, you know, you just upload it, test it, delete it.
Is it good enough if you do it on your development website?
No, you need to do it on your production because your permissions could be different. Right. So I think somewhere in here, I'm going to put a link to a permission script for anybody that doesn't really know anything about permissions. You can, if you know about the command line, you can get this script and type in exactly what it says. It gives you instructions, you know, on how to use it. So it basically says type, you know, /script, put in your parameters, and it'll secure your site. If you run security review after it, and it doesn't give you any writable access, then you're good to go, at least according to security review. Let's see. Anybody want to talk about development workflows? I know most people in here probably know about it. I've been talking for a while. Brandon, you're gonna volunteer yet? Just why would you want to have a development, staging, and production site?
Go for it.
Well, so again, the basic thing about like using a development workflow is just using source control on wherever you're serving your website from. It's like kind of like the type keep in mind when companies will use source control and then sort of and then not use it on their production server. Like they'll create an artifact and sort of like and then just use file transfer utilities like rsync or something to serve the website. But that makes that website extremely vulnerable to changes to the code. But if you have it in Git, it becomes just one command, like, you know, git status to see if any files have changed, you know, outside of the files directory. So that's like the basic reason. The other ones are for that you if you can be confident in what you're developing and that's not on the main site, then much more likely that you'd be able to be secure. I think those are the two biggest.
And if there is a question to production websites been compromised, you can just replace it.
Maybe. That's like, I mean, if your production site's been compromised, then potentially replacing it may not, even with a Drupal site, it isn't a guarantee that that will be safe. That's one of the funny things about when you have especially with, that's one of the reasons why you want to make sure that you keep PHP filters off. And, like, if your production site was compromised,
You don't also want to replace the reason it got compromised. But then
you can in the code base, but then the database could potentially run PHP code from stuff only stored in the database. So it becomes a little bit, it's not quite as black and white as what you stated, but it does help you in that regard, and you can very easily uncover what happened, which is one of the bigger problems. It's a big problem with WordPress sites because WordPress is much easier to, and it's much more common workflow to just sort of install modules through the interface. But there's no record keeping of like what you installed or what somebody else installed or God knows what else happened. So in that case, if you're running a WordPress site, I'd say it's definitely have some sort of idea, like have something that will tell you if the source code files have changed or not. Sorry.
So my general understanding on it was, if you separate your development, staging, and production, then what you're going to end up with is 3 copies of your site. So let's say, worst case scenario, you decide your production site is completely compromised, including your database. Well, you have a backup. Hopefully, if you're doing this every day, you have a backup from yesterday. So you decide that your database has now PHP script in it. You might lose 1 day's worth of user comments and things like that. But so Michael, is that correct? Then if you literally like deleted your production server, you deleted the code, you deleted the database, you deleted the files, and you uploaded it again from your laptop, right? Which it was off the network, and it was secure because you know exactly when you were compromised. Then you should be restoring to a state that was uncompromised.
Uncompromised, but still vulnerable.
But still vulnerable, right? So you have to figure out what happened.
You have to delete your production site, restore from a backup, patch, and then you can upload that to production.
Yeah. But
Almost.
is there something we're missing?
Because, right, so like that is, if you are really worried, the only thing you can do is burn the building down. Like, completely, it's just like destroy the server. Because if a site gets compromised, it's actually possible to compromise a server from that point, which I think you experienced.
Yes.
And even, yeah, sure.
When you say server, do you actually mean the machine or do you mean the hard drive? Or both?
I was going as far as OS, but with some of the security stuff people have done with with the Apple BIOS, just if you are genuinely worried about security, just throw it in the trash. I mean that is how and that's only if you're, I don't know, worried about more than just your own. I mean, that's a very high bar.
Yeah.
Other people's medical information would be the bar, which throw it in the trash would be my advice. But when we're talking kind of theoretically and whatever, once you're if PHP is compromised, then potentially the server is compromised, and at that point, even potentially the hardware is compromised. That's really all in kind of tinfoil hat land, but it's definitely physically and within reason possible.
How's that happen? It has happened. You said that.
Yeah, there's a really weird exploit actually on Macs where essentially they can sort of flash the BIOS, the boot stuff, and it'll and I think it's still essentially impossible to get rid of that. And so
even if you took your hard drive out of your computer and you bought a brand new one and you put it in, well, they have hacked the flash memory, the BIOS on your motherboard. So you put a brand new computer in, you reinstall OS 10, you're still compromised because it's your actual, it's one level below that.
But you can still reflash your BIOS. I mean, you're not, put new firmware in there, you're good to go.
Yeah, it's not.
On Apple?
It's not BIOS, Apple's good from EFI, but there's EFI on your video cards also. So you can actually affect your video card and get a new machine and then have the EFI on your video card flashed.
Well, they do that for the master boot record on your hard drive. You can affect that. So, and the USB. What's the USB one?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They hack the firmware on your USB. So any computer you plug it into, it looks like a regular USB, but it's got the virus on it.
By the way, I was watching a little security video of this guy that was a kind of professional cracker. And he said that they would pass out USB sticks at these conferences they go to for free, and everybody pick one up and they go home and plug it in their machine. Now they've got everybody's machine. And even if it's a legitimate person giving them out, you can go grab a bunch of them, put the software on them, throw them back out on the table.
Right.
So interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, and when it comes down to the biggest sort of well, oh my God, what do I do if that happens, or how do I protect myself from that? And that's where the defense in depth sort of philosophy kind of comes in. It's and also monitoring in depth. If you are a custodian of critical information, then monitoring the access to that information is one of the most important things you can do to ensure its security. Because kind of what the place where my head goes when I think about this stuff is nothing's actually secure. We can just make it. It's sort of you can only make it so that somebody has to spend either a great deal of effort or a great deal of time to gain
money.
Or money, right?
And the target has to be worthwhile usually.
Exactly. Right. So building a vault around your house is probably a waste of money because nobody really cares, right? Nobody's gonna but probably getting a security system, or at least putting is maybe a good idea, but putting the sticker on your windows is a great idea, right? Because when it comes down to it, people that are trying to rob your house are going to see oh, maybe this person has security. I'll just go to the next house that definitely doesn't.
That's what the thief says. They just look at the one that doesn't have a dog, doesn't have a sticker. It's an easy target.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of these exploits kind of come in, and why they can happen so quickly is that they automate that process essentially.
Well, I was asking this question also, but if you can tell from the internet what version of Drupal you're running on a site, so that somebody trying to hack your site, can they just go out there and see, oh yeah, that's a vulnerable version? Is that an easy thing to do?
So real quick, I'm seeing we're a little low on time. Do you know if the live feed cuts off exactly at 9?
I do not know.
Okay, let me blow through this real quick. So development workflows, super important. Obviously there's potential ways around that in regards to your production site can become very compromised. But I mean, this will help. You can, even if you trash the server, you at least have a copy of your data. So if you get a new server, you can put the data on it. Continuing, my workflow involves keeping my development side on my local machine, and then I keep my local database backups there so that I have my backups off my production server, right? Because if your backups on your production server and it becomes compromised, well, now your backups are probably compromised too. Don't let your production server know about your home server. I mean, if you put ways to connect to your home server, like FTP or something automatically, you're probably just asking for trouble. Set the right permissions. Here's a link that you can go to download this script I was talking about. It's from Drupal.org, and it should be pretty good to go to pass the security review module. There's another guide for how to administer a Drupal site. Protect your code with Git. Git's a great tool. It's for versioning, and you'll know if somebody changed your code. Use the backup and migrate module for backing up your database. Y'all can talk about this later as to whether or not this is the right way to do it. But I was thinking a secure way to do it would be use the backup and migrate module to create a local copy at some time of day, and then later run a cron job that downloads it and then deletes it using SSH with private keys. You don't want to send your database unencrypted over email or FTP. That's just asking for trouble again. Test your backups so that you know whether or not they work, because if you wait until you've actually been compromised, you might find out you forgot to back up your files directory, or your backups weren't running as often as you thought they were, or it doesn't work at all. Something unexpected happens, and maybe you have an incredibly long amount of downtime. You don't want that to happen to you. So always dress up. 2 simple words can keep you from having to go through all this. Thank you very much.
Well done.
4 seconds to go.